Imagine this: your cat visits the litter box for the fourth time in an hour. He sits there for a while, strains, walks away, and nothing.
Or worse, you find a puddle not in the box, but on the carpet next to the couch. Most owners' first thought is that the cat is stubborn, that he's taking revenge, that he just doesn't like the new litter.
But if your cat has started going outside the box, the first thing a vet needs to rule out is the bladder.
This is called FLUTD, feline lower urinary tract disease, and it's one of the most common reasons cat owners end up at the vet clinic. The problem is that the symptom and the cause look like a behavioral issue, when in reality it's pain. The cat associates the litter box with pain during urination
And physically starts to avoid it, searching for a spot where he thinks it might hurt less.
The first sign appears long before a cat starts missing the box. More frequent litter box visits, but very little urine each time. Most owners assume the cat is just drinking more, but in reality, it means the bladder is irritated and sending urge signals even when barely any urine has accumulated. A change in frequency, not puddles outside the box, is the earliest warning sign. Weight is another factor almost never discussed in this context. Overweight, sedentary cats have a significantly higher risk of feline lower urinary tract disease, regardless of stress or diet. A cat who barely moves drinks less water, which directly affects bladder health. 10 minutes of active play a day, a wand, a laser,
Raises activity, stimulates thirst, and lowers stress simultaneously. It's the cheapest preventive tool on this list.
Everything I'll cover from here on is prevention and support. Now that we've cleared that up, let's get into why this problem develops in the first place and what can realistically be done about it. Because there are actually 3 causes, and each requires its own approach. The most common cause that owners never even suspect is stress. In most cats presenting with urinary symptoms, veterinarians find no stones and no bacteria. This is called idiopathic cystitis, and it accounts for the majority of FLUTD cases. A cat with this condition has a chronically elevated stress hormone that directly irritates the bladder wall. Pay attention to whether there's quiet crying specifically at the moment of urination.
That's a direct signal of pain that's easy to miss if the litter box is in a far corner of the house.
Some cats become noticeably quieter, or conversely try to leave the box as quickly as possible, as if trying to escape the pain. If you hear that sound even once, it's worth starting to monitor more carefully how often the cat visits the box and what color the urine is. Together, these signs give a far more complete picture of what's happening than either one does alone. The trigger can be anything that from a human perspective seems completely insignificant. A new cat in the home, furniture being moved, a change in routine, a territorial conflict with another animal, even one litter box shared among 3 cats.
And this is exactly where the method is simplest on paper, but most often ignored in practice. The formula is straightforward.
The number of litter boxes should equal the number of cats in the home plus 1. That means 2 boxes for 1 cat, 3 for 2 cats, and so on. The boxes need to be placed in different quiet spots, because to a cat, 2 litter boxes side by side are essentially 1 box from a territorial perspective. But changing the number of boxes is only part of the work on reducing stress. A cat who lives in an apartment with no vertical space, no places to hide and feels safe, is in a state of chronic anxiety, even if he looks calm from the outside. Shelves, scratching posts at various heights, enclosed cat houses, or simply cardboard boxes in the corners of rooms all give the cat a sense of control over his environment. And it's precisely the lack of that control that is the main trigger of stress cystitis. A separate tool with clinical support for cats with recurrent idiopathic cystitis is a pheromone diffuser, such as Feel Away. These release a synthetic analog of the calming pheromones cats deposit when they rub their faces on objects,
It's not a guarantee, but in cats with a stress trigger, they noticeably reduce the frequency of flare-ups without any change to diet.
Every cat also needs a resting spot where other animals won't bother him. If there's conflict between cats in your home, even quiet conflict, with no obvious fighting, that may be the root cause of one of them stopping using the litter box. This isn't about training or punishment. It's about removing the source of the anxiety that is physically inflaming his bladder. There's one more tool that works on stress cystitis from the inside, and it's rarely discussed in the context of feline urinary health. That's omega-3 fatty acids. Clinical data shows that a diet supplemented with omega-3s reduces both the frequency and the severity of flare-ups, specifically in idiopathic cystitis, the type caused by stress, not stones. The mechanism is simple. Omega-3s reduce systemic inflammation, and the bladder wall responds to the stress hormone less acutely. The easiest way to add omega-3s to a cat's diet is a small amount of fish oil specifically formulated for cats, or a small piece of sardine packed in plain water with no salt a few times a week. Important: do not use human fish oil in large doses, as excess can interfere with vitamin E absorption.
Start with the minimum amount and watch for any gastrointestinal reaction. There's a cause that acts quietly and invisibly,
which is exactly why it's most often missed. That cause is insufficient water intake. A cat who drinks too little produces concentrated urine, and concentrated urine irritates the bladder wall far more than dilute urine does. Crystals form more easily in this environment, which is why a cat who has a calm home and enough litter boxes can still have recurring episodes. A cat who eats only dry food gets several times less moisture from his food than a cat on wet food, and often doesn't compensate adequately even if a water bowl sits right next to the food bowl. The approach here is to increase fluid intake by whatever method actually works for the individual cat, ideally combining a few. Switching at least part of the diet to wet food gives the biggest and most predictable effect. Replacing even a third of the daily dry food portion with wet food noticeably raises total moisture intake. A drinking fountain works better than a still bowl because many cats instinctively prefer running water.
Place at least 2 or 3 water bowls in different rooms of the house, away from the litter box and the food bowl.
Cats find it physically and psychologically unpleasant to drink near where they eliminate. If the cat refuses plain water altogether, add a teaspoon of low-sodium broth with no onion or garlic to his daily water, or mix a little water into his wet food. The smell changes so subtly that a person will barely notice it, but for the cat, it is enough of an incentive to approach the bowl and drink significantly more than he would from plain water. More fluid, less concentrated urine, less irritation to the bladder wall. This is the simplest daily action that genuinely reduces the load on the urinary system and costs essentially nothing. Having addressed stress and water, we come to the third cause, which requires not a lifestyle solution, but a diagnosis. That cause is crystals and stones, struvite or oxalate. Check the color of the urine in the litter box. Any pink or red tint is a reason to see a veterinarian immediately, not to wait and watch for a few more days, even if the cat seems energetic and otherwise behaves normally.
Blood in the urine can indicate stones, acute bladder inflammation, or even the early stages of a blockage.
And urine color is one of the simplest indicators an owner can observe without any specialized equipment. If your litter is hard to assess for color, it's worth checking the box at least once a week, immediately after the cat has used it, especially if you've already noticed other signs from this video. Struvite and oxalate crystals form differently and require opposite dietary approaches. What helps dissolve one type of stone promotes the formation of the other. This is why, without a urine analysis from a veterinarian, guessing which type of stones your cat has and attempting to adjust urine acidity through home remedies is a risk of making things worse, not better. After diagnosis, the veterinarian will most likely recommend a prescription diet such as Royal Canin urinary or Hills CD. These foods shift urine pH and mineral balance in precisely the right direction depending on the stone type. And this is the only evidence-based method for long-term management.
Trying to replicate this effect with home remedies without knowing the stone type is like treating a disease without knowing the diagnosis.
If your cat has already had even one episode of painful urination or going outside the box, a urine analysis is the first step, not an optional add-on. And it is what determines what can safely be added to the diet going forward. Two supplements that keep coming up in the context of cat urinary problems are cranberry extract and D-mannose. Both sound convincing, both are sold in pet stores, and both deserve an honest conversation about what they actually do and for whom. Cranberry extract is often marketed as something that prevents bacteria from attaching to the walls of the urinary tract. However, a systematic review of veterinary studies found no confirmed effect in cats specifically. If you decide to try it, follow the dosage on the packaging and start with the minimum amount. Calling cranberry a treatment would be dishonest. At best, it's mild support that doesn't replace diagnosis. D-mannose works by binding E. coli, so it can't attach to the bladder wall, but only against bacterial infection, which is a minority of feline lower urinary tract disease cases. If the cause is stress cystitis or stones, it won't help. If a vet has confirmed a bacterial infection, a typical dose is around a quarter teaspoon of powder in water or food once or twice a day, though confirm the amount with your vet since it depends on the cat's weight and product. So the practical plan is straightforward. Litter boxes and stress first, then water in whatever form works for your cat, and a urine analysis before adding anything to the diet, in exactly that order.